I think Nebuchadnezzar is for someone to really look and research just as much as Daniel. Look at the lives, look at what was accomplished, and what can we learn from those lessons and apply it to our time.
Nothing stays the same. They called it the Fertile Crescent for a reason. It was literally, like you said, quote unquote, the land of milk and honey. You go in the Hittite Civilization and they found cache after cache of those clay vessels that used to transport wine. Well, those were also packed full of honey and psilocybin mushrooms. So you wonder, with what was given to us naturally as a way to connect or reinterpret something in a waking state.
The only time in history that's written down talking about something to the effect of a Stargate with Nebuchadnezzar.
And Nebuchadnezzar was super famous through history. You're going back into what? Post-Sumerian, coming out through that era, through the Assyrians, the Hittites, and then we get back in, we're talking far. So why is Nebuchadnezzar still within the realm of almost everybody knows that name? Like, how did that name survive for, 5,000 years? And so many, even Julius Caesar barely holds on today, but why did Nebuchadnezzar survive such a lengthy time? I mean, what is encoded in that name keeps getting brought forward in terms of ancient knowledge? You talked about, that would be considered an alchemist or something. If you were able to control fire and not be burned, imagine the level of somebody going, whoa. They're actually controlling physical matter. And this descendancy from Nebuchadnezzar all the way until, you look at presidents across the world and kings, etc., that whole royal clan and royal class and central banks of people intermarried in between the royalty, all stems from that same bloodline back from Nebuchadnezzar's time.
Nebuchadnezzar was loved. He was loved by his men. Nebuchadnezzar was brilliant genius. He would have been a Nikola Tesla of his time. No, he was not just a heir to the throne, like some tyrant. And even seeing his transitions and him becoming a saved man and going through such transitions, and I believe a major part of that is that he was given the dream that explains the fulfillment of prophecy to the T. And such a dynamic, important thing that is explaining exactly where we're going. Man, how could you not have that particular name? His importance is just so high of a man for that time. It wasn't all negative. He had achieved incredible feats within Babylon. I mean, you would probably know more on the research of all the wonders that happened in Babylon under his rule. I mean, there's definitely some pretty intense things, but there was a lot of innovation. And likewise, what can we learn? What can we learn from the past? What can we learn from our history and apply it to our time of now so we don't repeat it? And I think that person was such a dynamic player, just as much as Daniel was brought forth to be given those visions or the dreams of being able to interpret that which he had a dream of and didn't even know what it meant. And then Daniel was given the ability to interpret and what that meant. Yeah, I think Nebuchadnezzar is for someone to really look and research just as much as Daniel. Look at the lives, look at what was accomplished, and what can we learn from those lessons and apply it to our time.
Nothing stays the same, because you got to think about the Fertile Crescent back that time. You look at a lot of the iconography in some of these temples and what are the relics from the museums and still standing areas of temples, etc., around. But a lot of them had the iconography of the lotus and also the mushroom. And then, you go in the Hittite Civilization and they found cache after cache of those clay vessels that used to transport wine. Well, those were also packed full of honey and psilocybin mushrooms. So you wonder, with what was given to us naturally as a way to connect or reinterpret something in a waking state, how all this blends in. Because today, if you were to try to put that in the same context, you'd be like, nah, it's impossible because mushrooms couldn't grow there. It's way too dry. Flip of Fertile Crescent, they called it the Fertile Crescent for a reason. It was literally, like you said, quote unquote, the land of milk and honey. So the biggest takeaway from that is things that are always changing and shall continue to change into the future in cycles. And Ransom, sorry to cut you off there. You want to chime in?
I was thinking about the main point of that story about no real idea that you're going to believe in needs to be forced upon anyone. So any kind of force that's put on you for any idea, whether it's, talking about climate or talking about religion or government, these ideas shouldn't need to be forced on anyone if they're the correct, good ideas, and that's the right way that they're being put forward. And you were talking about, the only time in history that's written down talking about something to the effect of a Stargate with Nebuchadnezzar. And I often think about Nebuchadnezzar because it really intersects with the time we live in now. A lot of people don't know, but about 250,000 cuneiform tablets were found in Iraq prior to the war. They were going to be translated and studied and things like that by some German and French archaeologists. It was the reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar. And I think that was kind of a tilt of the hat to the world elite that he had found something important. And then, we go into war right away for that, and we don't go seize the oil fields, and we don't do these other things. But what we did do is make a beeline for the Baghdad Museum of Natural History. And then somehow, in front of all of our troops, all of that stuff got stolen, and, who or where it went to. But obviously had some ancient knowledge associated with Nebuchadnezzar. And you talk about that story of the Hebrew. Nebuchadnezzar knew that his people knew nothing about it. And he wasn't, he didn't have a problem with calling for the people that actually were experts on whatever it was that he was messing with there, which were the Hebrew. And, it talks all about how they came with their special suits, special dress. They knew how to deal with whatever it was, whether it was technology or spiritual or what it was. They knew how to interact with it. And it's weird that we get to a point now where the world's full of war, and that part of the world is so pivotal about what's going on with the world government now. And so it seems like we're just repeating those times, and they're using some of the maybe same technology possibly that they were using then. But overall, that story is about, he wasn't trying to force people to believe the same things at that time. And what a revolutionary idea that you don't have to convert at the point of a sword, so to speak.
Now think about that for a second. Through the immense eternal power of love, would put theirself on the line for the purpose of saving them from herself, but even more so they can have the free will choice to not even choose a solution. And I think that's really facing right now. And, like Benjamin Franklin says, where liberty dwells, there is my country. Even within the different organizations they were part of at that time, but those principles of freedom and the liberty of conscience, that is the most important thing to stay centered on. For instance, learning and keeping an open mind. Tapping into different things within vibrational frequency, different things within the power of thought, new solutions, learning so much. If I can keep my mind open, knowing where my foundation and the rock of where I can stand, but yet still be open and receive new light, new information, and put it through the lens. And that's just going to parallel in every part of life.
Yeah, I like that when you're saying, put it through your own lens and see if it resonates with you correctly. But the ability to do that, to put that opposing information through a different lens, that's a whole different gamut and a whole different road to go down. But most people are not prepared to take that giant step of, okay, here's the information, and you have to put it through your own lens and choose whether it's right or not for you. Because just the sheer amount of information would overload most people of, all right, now I got to do all the research over here. Now I got to do all the research over here. And I got to do all this research, and my life becomes very complicated for me to make up my own mind.
And like you said, if you get to that point, then you go, oh my goodness, there's like a sea of information. I have to have like 10 extra lives now just to find and figure what is and what isn't. Well, that could be another thing to try to ignore a lot of the noise and cut down. Take times and carve out start with 5 minutes of maybe just meditating. And I would take a section like a promise in God's word. The one that I've always go to, Jeremiah 33:3. Call unto me and I'll answer thee. I shall do great mighty things which thou knowest not. Quiet your mind. Turn all of these things out. Get back in touch. And I truly believe that you could be able to filter out a lot and be able to, the dots will start connecting. At its core is so phenomenal, so beautiful, and allows people that place to go, I can put it through this filter and analyze it in a way.
Yeah, but Spence, you were saying you're trying to rip in on something that would take 45 minutes, but coming back into the Sunday law thing where they're going to permit or not permit certain amount of businesses to be open and for you to get taxed on a certain level and be able to have commerce, buy, sell, trade. I'm really curious to see where you think this might be taking us with all these things we're seeing up to this point of somewhere that Sunday law fits in with your movements tracked, your ability to buy tracked, your ability to transact tracked.
And a lot of things that we see is where people are going to believe that a particular chip or what I say in the mark in the hand or in the forehead was going to be that mark of the beast. Actually, it isn't. But you could see how the connection will indeed allow a further restriction of freedom and continuation of just tracking, every move here and there. You see the advancements within blockchain. So within blockchain, there's some phenomenal things, but at the same time, because it can reconcile within seconds, you could, for instance, let's say you're standing at the checkout counter and you can within nanoseconds see if your social credit score would allow you to continue on with that purchase or not based on just how fast things are in live time. And let's say, for instance, you can store eons of information within your DNA code in itself. And I thought that's so interesting. Actually, as it says as in the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man be. And back in those time frames, the antediluvians were getting deep into very similar things right now. Interweaving of DNA code, messing around with animal-human migration, a lot of really interesting things that was kind of left out of the history books. And you got to dive in there. So if you see the repeat of that, and even at that time, what had occurred is that had it not had rain on the earth, because the dew would come down from the precipitation all up within the atmospheres. And so if it had not rained and a message was given that it's going to rain, you'd sound like you're nuts. And you want to build this old school boat. This sounds like it's double nuts. This guy's off the rocker. But he went and he employed everything that he was instructed and believed to do. And even a lot of people were employed by him to even build that large vessel. Basically, people not wanting that protection was allowed to be given that freedom. Then you see the withholdings of the spiritual ability of withholding that atmosphere back came down. It wasn't God punishing or, bam, I want to flood you. More so, look, I'm here to provide life. But of a consistent rejection, then finally you're given the free choice, the God of freedom. Okay, if you don't want life, then I will give you what you would like. And had to let them give what was wanted. And all but a few, obviously, were saved at that time. How that connects within here is you could say that there's a constant wanting of trying to rebuild a Babel tower or try to do things in our own power, or later we're not going to have a flood again. You see the control mechanism, and I wanted to just add it there simply in 2 Corinthians 3:17. This is a really important statement because we're going to see some different things. And when you get into, hey, we're going to intermingle religion within your freedoms and all those things like that, no, I think that, like Ransom said, hey, if you want to be a Buddhist, if you want to be Hindu, that's incredible. I will love to learn from all walks of faith, and I have, and I continue. But as soon as you're like, no, you can't because of this, whoa, that's a problem. 2 Corinthians 3:17 says, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. So that means if there is a religious push that would restrict liberty, the Spirit of the Lord truly is not there. And I think at its core, if religion is being used to restrict liberty, that right there just shows me where the Spirit of the Lord is not.
So how is the past connected to what we're seeing right now? Breaking down this whole firmament where there wasn't so much rain as Noah was told in foretelling that there would be a massive rain. Obviously, there were cracks in the earth, and then the ocean spilled out as well. It wasn't just from the above ground water rainfall. It was earth cracks and fissures and jets of water oozing from the earth as well. There's more water in the crust of the planet than there is on the surface. So think about that for a second. The magnetic field was completely different at that time. But the stories of the tech being equal to what we have today in some shape, fashion, or form. Because if they were going to tinker with DNA and create chimeras and try to create species, build the Tower of Babel, and, obviously the engineering was quite advanced if they're going to build something that as tall as the Dubai Tower. And there's a lot of history that's being hidden from us.